Hey there, I'm Sarah, and for our regional assessment, Stefan and I put together this presentation about in-stream flows in the Colorado River Basin. So we'll start out with a quick overview of the basin, and then kind of define in-stream flows. We'll discuss some of the regional threats to in-stream flows, give a little bit of legal context, and then finally we'll wrap things up with a case study that shows how in-stream flows have been used to support the socio-ecological integrity of the Colorado River Basin.
The Colorado River is the largest river in the southwest United States. It flows over 1,400 miles from its origin in the Rocky Mountains southwest, where it eventually meets the Pacific at the Gulf of California. The basin, the Colorado Basin, covers roughly 242,000 square miles and drains seven total U.S. states. Those include Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Over the course of its length, the river is utilized by a variety of different interest groups. Those range from recreational floaters to farmers to municipal water users who may use water from the Colorado for something as simple as washing their car or watering their lawn. Um, Demand for water is extremely high in the basin. This is in part due to the aridity of the climate in the southwest United States. The river provides water resources for an estimated 40 million people, and it irrigates around 5.5 million acres of farmland. Historically, the Colorado was a very wild river, and it fluctuated greatly throughout the year, with winter flows getting down as low as 2,500 cubic feet per second, and summer flows sometimes reaching 100,000 cubic feet per second. So great variations throughout the year, all dependent on the amount of snowpack in the mountains, as well as precipitation and rain events throughout the year. In its natural state, the river supported a large number of endemic fish species, so fish species native only to the Colorado River Basin, and it also on the banks, the riparian areas, and in the many canyons that the river formed. There were a number of terrestrial animal species, including birds, reptiles, and large and small mammals that used the river corridor as their home. Colorado was also utilized by early human inhabitants of the area. The Kokopah used the Colorado to irrigate crops as well as to fish for food. And then later, as white Europeans came into the area, they also utilized the Colorado for irrigation, transportation, and as a means of providing food. So the Colorado River today is really the lifeblood of the Southwest U.S. Um, It supports a variety of different interest groups, as I mentioned earlier, as well as a number of industries. One big one, and one that's often overlooked, is tourism related to the river. It's vital to local economies within the basin, and river-related recreation in the Colorado River Basin can generate upwards of $9 billion a year. Rural and urban water users are also depend on the Colorado as their main source of water. It provides water for many large municipalities such as Las Vegas and San Diego, as well as providing irrigation water for the farmland in the region. This is a very arid region that receives very little rainfall, So much of the irrigation water, all of the irrigation water is derived from um, the river and the reservoirs created behind its many dams. Because the Colorado is so regionally important, there are a number of challenges and issues related to flows within the river. The river has, along its entire course, been dammed in a number of places. Some major dams, including Glen Canyon Dam and Hoover Dam. Um, this has altered the natural flow of the river, which has decreased the large sediment loads that used to transport all the way to the ocean, which has in turn led to a decrease in vital in-river habitat for many sensitive wildlife species, including endemic fish species. Overallocation of water in the Colorado has become a major problem, especially with the rapidly growing population in the Southwest United States. This has resulted in greater demand for municipalities, and that there's tension there as these cities grow. Um, they create tension with agricultural interests that depend on the water for irrigating crops. Climate change and its impacts, especially those related to drought and rises in temperature, are going to make the water crisis on the Colorado that much worse, um, as as less precipitation falls. Um, the river is actually going to run lower, so there's less water available, um, and additionally, there's going to be a greater demand for water during these drought periods. So, to prevent issues like overallocation, it is important for future management of water resources in the Colorado to adapt to these new climate and population realities rather than base management practices off of historic trends seen on the Colorado in the past.
Water rights in the Colorado River Basin are notoriously litigious and complicated. So instead of getting lost in the weeds here, I'll just touch on some of the most important legal concepts related to in-stream flows. So first of all, this probably rings a bell. Water rights here are based on the doctrine of prior appropriations, which is often summed up as first in time, first in right. Also, legally, water rights need to be put towards what's called beneficial use, which traditionally just means for things like agriculture, industry, domestic use. So until like the 1970s, leaving water just in the stream was considered wasteful. The environmental movement of the 70s helped us finally recognize that it was not, in fact, wasteful to leave water in streams and rivers like the Colorado. So, obviously, in-stream flows are really important for things like river ecosystems and recreation. With that in mind, the concept of beneficial use kind of legally expanded to include in-stream flows. And in practice, this means that agencies, tribes, NGOs, whoever, can decide to leave their water in the channel without risking losing their water rights, because now in-stream flows are actually officially considered a beneficial use. So this is great. We now have the legal basis to leave water in rivers, but it can still be tough to actually pull this off, right? The Colorado is already over allocated, so it's tricky to find water for in-stream flows when every drop has already been claimed. but there are a few notable success stories here. To wrap up, I'll review a case study about restoring in-stream flows to conserve an imperiled fish in the Colorado River Basin. Full disclosure, this is one of my work projects, but I do think it's a good fit and it just provides like a concrete example of a lot of the topics Stefan and I discussed today. So, first of all, let's zoom in to the Virgin River, which is a tributary of the Colorado. We have an endemic minnow here called the Virgin spine dace that was in trouble. A couple years ago, its populations were declining, and it had even been locally extirpated from big sections of its historically occupied range. And of course, insufficient in-stream flows definitely contributed to this decline. So this fish needed more water, but like everywhere else in the Colorado River Basin, water resources here are already overallocated. So where do we find more water for this fish? The answer is complicated, expensive, and kind of messy, but it worked. So part of the spine dace's range flows through the Shibwitz Paiute Reservation. And as we discussed earlier in this class, the establishment of reservations implicitly includes the water rights necessary to make the land habitable. So with that in mind, in 2000, a Water Rights Settlement Act returned 4,000 acre-feet of federally reserved water rights to the Shibwitz Paiute. And again, there's not extra water flowing around, so open irrigation ditches in a section of the basin were piped, and that reduced the amount of water lost through seepage and evaporation. So great, now we have more water. So this water is returned to the Shibwitz Paiute, and then the Utah Division of Wildlife can lease over 1,800 acre-feet each year from the Shibwitz Paiute to then release into the river as in-stream flows. And the virgin spine dace love it. Their populations are doing much better these days. So to wrap things up, in-stream flows are critical to the social, economic, and ecological integrity of the Colorado River Basin. It's tricky to return water to these stressed, overallocated rivers, but when we can pull it off, the results are often really impressive. So, thanks for your time and have a good one.